and share my screen. And here we go. I think everyone should be able to see that now. All right, thanks again for joining. I'll be going through this this slide deck here, but yeah, in case you didn't know, this webinar is on prelims and lien waivers and how how it can protect your revenue. So just do a quick intro on me in case you haven't met me yet, but my name is Aaron. Nice to meet you. Thanks again for joining. Just a quick thing of what we do at CRM. We help construction companies get paid faster and lower their risk through our prelim and mechanics lien services. We're based in Orange County, but we offer lien services in all 50 states. We have clients across the United States. We work quite a bit with subs and suppliers, but we also have several GCs we work with, more on the for like lien services specifically. It's a family business. It was actually started by my mother and father-in-law like 38 years ago, before I was born. And then they brought me on about 5 years ago as they've kind of transitioned into retirement. So now I'm kind of managing most of the day-to-day operations. And some of my hobbies when I'm not doing prelims and liens, I enjoy surfing, running, reading, and time with my family. Got a couple of quick photos here just so you can see a little more of who we are. So this is a photo of our team probably about 1.5 years ago. But we have lots of young kids on the team, which is fun. My mother and father-in-law are there as well. They're the ones that started the business. They actually met at a construction company. That's how they met. And here's a photo of my family. So this is my wife, Lexi, and my son, Paxton. And we actually have another baby on the way. So my wife is due in March with our second son. So we're excited about that. Yeah, that's me. Now I'll pass over to Adam to do his intro.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, congrats, Aaron.
Thank you.
I didn't know about the new one.
I know. I realized as I was saying that I actually haven't told you that. Yeah. But,
yeah. My name's Adam Eagle. You can just click on it to get those bullets. So I founded the company Beam, and we help contractors simplify all of the financial, sales, and kind of operations aspects of their construction businesses. And our goal is to help your business earn more money. We're based in the Bay Area. Our whole team is based all around here, and we have an office that I'm sitting in. And we serve contractors all around the United States. And we started a company back in 2022. We now have hundreds of contractors using Beam to power their estimating, invoicing, lien waiver management, all of that. My hobbies, food, travel, hiking with my dog, PETA, and learning random facts. I love just learning about tons of different things. That's kind of how I got into construction. I was really into architecture, and then I started learning about construction many years ago, and then got more and more into it. Bottom left photo is our team. We actually have some new team members, so this photo is already a little bit outdated. And on my right is my fiance and my slightly furrier child / dog. And we're getting married in at this point it's 3 weeks. So excited for that. Lots of fun news around.
Congrats. I didn't know that either. So it's awesome. We're finding a lot about each other.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Well, now I'll kind of jump into the the agenda for today, what we'll cover, mostly kind of some of what we'll cover for the lien presentation, but I'll talk a little bit about why, lien law is important, the process for securing lien rights, what is a prelim, so some of the hidden benefits of the prelim and also common mistakes to avoid. I'll talk about what is a lien, how they work and how they can protect you. I'll talk about the easiest and fastest way to secure lien rights. Hint is you can just work with us, but that's what that slide will be about. And then I'll talk a little bit about how prelims and lien waivers really are the plan A to get paid faster, and liens are really more of like the worst case scenario. And then Adam will go through his presentation and demo on lien waivers and software for that. So that's what we'll cover. So hopefully this is helpful for you. And then just some goals for today and what success looks like, at least for my portion, the basics of lien law, why it's important. You feel comfortable and confident on what steps you need to take to secure lien rights. And honestly, I hope this is the most fun lien presentation you've ever witnessed. I'm not sure how many lien presentations you've been a part of, but I try to make it fun and engaging because it can get dry at times. So I try to make it fun. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in head first. So why is lien law important? So I always like to kind of give a quick kind of rundown on lien law, how it started and why it's important in the US. So liens actually go back all the way, mechanics liens specifically go all the way back to the founding of our nation. Thomas Jefferson was the one that actually passed the first Mechanics Lien Act all the way back in 1791. It started in Maryland, that's where it passed, and then it quickly was, that law was passed in every state, which is why we now have, lien laws in every specific state in the US. And it was a really important part of the, quick expansion and development of the US. When we first, were kind of growing as a country and settling all these different states, there was a shortage of like labor and supplies. So the Lien Act really helped encourage construction to happen even in a slightly risky environment. And guess what? Today, construction is still really risky. So that's why these laws exist. Speaking of risk, there was a study I recently found that showed there was $5 billion in unpaid or delayed payments annually. I think that was back in 2021. And maybe even more now, but there is a higher risk of non-payment in construction. And that's why utilizing tools like prelims, liens, lien waivers, having some good tools and software around your payments and how you get paid and how you lower your risk of non-payment is super important, because there's just payment issues are very commonplace in construction. So that's why these lien laws exist. They're created to protect contractors and suppliers from non-payment by giving you a security interest in the property. And the US government has basically created this whole subset of laws. Every state's created a subset of laws to encourage construction to happen in a risky environment, right? So that's why these laws are there. Another reason why, lien law is important is other options of collection are not always sufficient, and they can be a lot more expensive and take longer. So compared to other things like a collection agency or an attorney or insurance, prelims and liens are actually a lot more cost effective because, like with our services, for instance, you pay just a flat fee for the document, and it's a lot cheaper than paying like an hourly rate for an attorney or a percentage of your contract or something like that for insurance. So it is a very cost effective strategy. So that's why lien law is important. So now I'll kind of talk about what the lien process looks like in California. And I know I saw early on there's people in Alabama and New York. What's great about California is a lot of states follow the same kind of process. California has very similar lien laws as other states. So it should be helpful in that way. Adam, your microphone might be picking up a siren.
Sorry about that.
You're good. I don't think that's me. So I'll go through the lien process in California, but once again, it's very similar. And then if I have time at the end, I'll try to go through some other states if that would be helpful if you have specific questions in the state you're working in. So I'm just going to put it all up here just because it's easier to reference. But when it comes to the lien process in California for private work, and really most states for private work, this is kind of what it looks like. But there's really three main steps. It's a preliminary notice, a mechanics lien, and perfecting the lien. So really quickly, just to jump into this, and all these things have timeframes too, which are really, really important. Once you know the steps and when they're due, that is like half the battle, and just being able to secure lien rights is understanding the laws and the timeframes. So the first step is that preliminary notice. That's due within the first 20 days of when you start supplying labor, materials, or services to the job site. The best practice for this is honestly to serve the prelim either right before or shortly after you start working on the job. We always recommend as soon as one of our customers starts working on the job, that's the best time to order the preliminary notice from us and get that prelim going. You just don't want to wait and do it late, because that can really impact your lien rights. Some states you can do it late, but it may only protect a portion of your work, like California. Other states, if you miss the due date, you just completely lose lien rights. So those due dates are really important. And that's why it's better. The rule of thumb for all of these things is start it sooner than you think you need to, because you don't want to wait till like the last day or the day before and be rushing and potentially lose lien rights. So first step is that prelim, and this is required in California and most states in the US for subs and suppliers For GCs in California, it's only required if you're doing residential work and there's a lender involved in the job. So I know there's probably lots of GCs on here. The prelim may not always be required, but it's still, even when it's optional, it can still be a really powerful tool to inform of the lien rights you have, and kind of be proactive about it when it comes to letting people know you're working on the job and you want to get paid. And then after that prelim, the next step is the mechanics lien. That's due within 90 days from completion or cessation of work in California. Best practice is, if you have lien rights and have an unpaid balance, I always recommend starting the lien process around day 60 or day 70 from your last day on the job site, because it can take a few days to get the lien recorded. And in order, the due date for every state is the lien has to be recorded within the time frame. So in California, it's 90 days, but you have to record that document in the county of where the work is being located. And sometimes it can take a couple days. Sometimes it can take a week. It really just depends on the county and how quickly they're moving. So I always recommend starting that around day 60 or 70 from the last day worked. So prelim, the time frame is based on start date. Lien, it's based on end date, right? And then the last step, a lot of people miss this one, but the liens actually don't last forever. They do have a shelf life and they expire. So you have to make sure, like, this is very, very rare, and I'll talk a little bit about this later. But if you do have if you're still unpaid after you file that lien, you have to make sure you perfect the lien within 90 days from it being recorded. And this is in California. Perfecting the lien is another way of saying opening up a lawsuit of foreclosure. So for that step, you would need to work with a licensed attorney in the state of where you're working. But you have to make sure you take that step. Otherwise, your lien could expire, and then you kind of have lost all that leverage from the lien. And then it could open a much longer process of getting paid. So that time frame is really important. Make sure to take further legal action. And I always recommend starting the whole legal process sooner than later. What we see is, like, 95% of the time that we record liens on behalf of our customers, they do get paid within 2, maybe 3 weeks. It's usually pretty quick. So if that doesn't happen, I always recommend talking to an attorney around 30 days after the lien's recorded, because that's usually indicative that there's a larger issue going on, and it'd be better to get in front of that than wait too long. Okay, cool. Is this helpful so far? I know I'm like talking fairly quickly. But yeah, hopefully this is.
Aaron, yeah, you got a question actually from Ed Barstow asking, does your service record the lien, or do I have to do that myself?
Yes, good question. I've been trying to keep an eye on the chat as they're coming through, but yes, we take care of when it comes to liens, we take care of preparing the lien, making sure it fulfills all the requirements of the law, and also recording it on your behalf with the county. So really the only part that you would need to do if you use our services for the lien is, like, request it and just let us know the job you're working on, and then sign it after we prepare it. And then we'll actually get it recorded for you in the county. And we can, most counties in the US now, we can record electronically. So that speeds up the process quite a bit, but there's some counties that still require us to mail it in or have someone go on site. So we can do it either way, like whatever way it's required, we can do it. It just takes a little longer if they don't electronically record. So yeah, but good question. I'll keep going here because otherwise I could be talking a long time. I want to make sure there's time for Adam's part of the presentation. So I'm just going to I didn't see too many people doing public work, so I'm not going to go in depth here. I'm just going to basically say, if you're doing public work, just know you can still secure lien rights, but you can't put a lien on public property. So the way you actually utilize your lien rights is you can claim on the value of the bond if the job is bonded, or you can do a stop payment notice. But basically in every state in the US, there is a process for utilizing your lien rights for public work. It's just you can't actually file a mechanics lien or perfect the lien. You can't, you think about it, you can't foreclose on a public high school or a library or something like that, or a public park. But you can do a suit on payment bond or a suit on the stop payment. So it's a very similar process. It just takes a slightly different course once you get to that step of needing to do a bond claim or stop payment notice. So yeah, that's public work. If anyone has more questions about public work, I can go more in depth later. But for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going here. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, how this process works most of the time, because I think there's lots of different things going on. And I think when it comes to lien, sometimes people expect like the worst, but actually most of the time things go pretty smoothly. So I just want to talk about that real quick. So, how the process works most of the time, you start a new construction project, you do that prelim, you can work with us to do that, or you can do it yourself if it's required. Do that within the time frame that's needed. So within 20 days from start date in California. Then you finish the work. Actually, as you're doing the work, you'll probably have multiple lien waivers. We'll talk more about that. But the prelim and the lien waivers are signs that the project is going the way it should. So those are really helpful parts of the process. And then when you finish the construction project, you get paid, right? So like 95% of the time we see the process working this way: prelims and lien waivers resulting in payment and resulting in faster payments without needing to do a lien. So lien is really like more of a worst case scenario thing. And I'll talk about that now. So how the process works: sometimes less than 10%, I usually see 3 to 5% of jobs require a lien, which is why, it is important to secure lien rights, because it still can happen. It's just not as often as you might think it is. But you start a new construction project, you do the prelim, within 20 days, you're doing your lien waivers, you finish the job, and then you, within 90 days from when you finish, you do the mechanics lien. And then, like I said, 95% of the time, our customers do get paid within 2 to 3 weeks from that lien getting recorded. So you get paid, and then you get to release the mechanics lien. So it is the final step. Typically with payment, once the lien's recorded, like the owner will submit like an official request to release the lien, or the GC will. But you are required to release the lien in most states, like within like 10 to 15 days typically of when you receive payment. And you definitely want to make sure you don't release the lien until like payment has been like deposited in your account. I've heard like horror stories of checks bouncing. So whenever it comes to like releasing lien rights or releasing liens, it's always like the money is in your account and you're good. So that's how it works sometimes. And all these blue boxes, by the way, are the services we offer. So we can help with the prelim, the filing of the lien, and also the releasing of the lien. The releasing of the lien is another document that does have to be recorded with the county in order for that lien to be lifted. Again, how the process works: very rarely, right? So I see this is more of a guesstimate, but based on working with a lot of customers, maybe 1 out of 1,000 jobs. It may be slightly more common depending on the type of work you're doing and your terms, but very rarely will it go all the way to a perfecting of the lien. So you start the work, you do the prelim, you finish the work, you record the lien, and then you still don't get paid. So then you perfect the lien, also known as a lawsuit of foreclosure. And then you get paid. And typically after you perfect the lien, what actually happens, right, is I'm not a licensed attorney, just disclaimer, but typically what happens based on the attorneys that I've talked to about this is most of the time it opens up like a settlement and arbitration process. So typically a settlement is reached way before you need to go to court, which is good, because if you go to court, that'll take much longer and could be a lot more costly, especially if you don't win the case. But yeah, typically when you perfect the lien, it opens up settlement arbitration, and then you get paid from the settlement. And then once you get paid, you do need to release the lien as well, especially if the lien is still active and hasn't expired yet. So yeah, that's the process extremely rarely. I see Ed did post a follow-up message question asking, do you have to sign the lien myself? The answer to that is yes. An authorized representative of your company does need to sign the lien in order for it to be executed. So that we can prepare the lien for you, make sure it's like all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, so to speak, but you do need to sign it yourself to officially execute it, because the lien is officially a legal document. So there is a little section on there that's like, you have to verify that everything is accurate and true. Otherwise it could be, what's the right word? It could be like a type of perjury if you try to put a lien in place without valid lien rights. So that's why you have to sign it. Yeah, good questions though. All right, I'm going to keep going along here.
There's a couple other questions if you want to quickly go through them. One is that, hey, what happens if your general contractor says they're not going to work with you as a subcontractor if you file a prelim? Can you still file a lien if you didn't file a prelim? It's one of those questions. And another one is, if there's a lender attached, do you still need to send a prelim? I think I know the answers to those, but I wanted to let our expert Aaron.
Yeah. So the first question, like legally, if it's a state that requires the prelim for subs and suppliers, legally the GC can't ask you to not do the prelim. GCs are actually legally required to provide any type of preliminary notice information when requested upon, like the owner and the lender and things like that. So that is a really weird situation if the GC is saying we won't work with you if you do the prelim. The chances are I don't know why they would be saying that. But for most, especially larger construction jobs, I know in a place like California where it is like a best practice, I know that like most subs, like 70-80% and suppliers are doing the prelim. So GCs are getting these types of notices all the time. They are very common and they're informational. They're not like threatening or demanding payment or anything like that. It's really just meant to be an informational thing, an educational thing. It's meant to educate the owner of who's working on the job. So yeah, I'm not really sure exactly how to answer that question, but
maybe steer clear of that general contractor.
Yeah, if the GC is saying that they don't want you to do the prelim, they're basically what they're doing is they're putting a lot more risk on you, and that would be a huge red flag for me of a client that could potentially have payment issues. So I would definitely approach that with caution and maybe force them to. If you can say, okay, I won't do the prelim, but prepay. Like you have to prepay everything before I do any work or to deliver any materials. That would be a good way to offset that. Okay, what was the other question?
The other question was, if there's a lender attached to a commercial construction project, do I still need to send a prelim? I think the answer is if you're a subcontractor, you do. If you are the general contractor, you don't. But
if it's commercial work, the GC doesn't technically have to do the prelim. However, it still can be helpful if to do it. It's just more of an optional notice. But yeah, typically in most states, the GC owner and lender does have to be served a copy of the prelim when it's required. But yeah, if it's commercial work, it's really just the subs and suppliers that are required to do it as a prerequisite to the lien.
Yeah. So Kathleen, if your business acts as a subcontractor, you still will need to serve a prelim.
Yeah. What has to be written in contracts about liens? Also, what if someone doesn't have a contract? I hear of people not having contracts and not getting paid. Good question. For the sake of time, Adam, if you could copy that somewhere, I can come back to it. I'll come back to that. I can't answer that question, but I want to make sure I might cover some of these things too. So I'm going to keep going. And if we have time, we'll get to that at the end. Once again, I can, my problem is I can talk way more than I think I can. Before I know it, I'm out of time. So, but yeah, thank you so much for all these questions. It's actually really weird for me to have people interested in this because most of the dinner parties I go to, people just gloss over as soon as I start talking about liens. So I really appreciate all the questions. All right. High five. We're probably more than halfway through this presentation already. So thanks for sticking with me. Give yourself a high five if you haven't already done that. So what is a preliminary notice and what is a lien? So I'm just going to kind of break this down a little bit more for each of these documents. So a preliminary notice actually has lots of different names depending on the state you're in, but they all mean the same thing. It's just different terminology that varies state by state, but it can be referred to as a prelim, notice to owner, pre-lien, notice to contractor, notice to furnishings. They're all the same thing, just different names for the same thing. It establishes lien rights. It's served at the beginning of the project within 20 days in California, like we talked about. But a lot of states have 30 days or 45 days. It really just depends. There's only a few states that actually requires it to be done before you start work. But typically it's within 20 to 30 days of the start date. Served on key stakeholders. So the preliminary notice will typically need to always be served to the GC, owner, and lender. That's seen as the stakeholders on the project. It's meant to be a proactive notice. So a lot of times people I talk to want to wait to do the prelim until after they invoice or after there's a payment delay. But typically that's too late because you might have already missed that 20-day time frame at that point. It's not meant to be a request for payment or indicative of payment issues. It's really truly meant to be a proactive informational notice. So it's meant to be done before there's any, that's why it's often done before any work has started, because it's meant to be done before there's any payment issues, right? And then it's the prerequisite to the lien for subs and suppliers, and then sometimes GCs. There's some states that do require the preliminary notice every time, like Arizona is one of those. But in a lot of instances, if you're the GC, it is optional. And it's informational, right? So it's meant to just inform the GC owner lender that there's a work of improvement being done. It's not like a demand for payment. It even says at the top, this is not a lien. So many times people misunderstand that, but it's really meant to like educate and inform that you're working on the job and that you have lien rights, and to educate the owner of how the lien could impact the property and the project, right? So it's meant to be helpful. I think prelims have a really bad rep that they're like annoying or aggressive or threatening. That really is not the case. If you actually read it, it's really meant just to be informational and helpful. So that is what a prelim is. Some hidden benefits of the prelim: moves you to the front of the line to get paid and speeds up the payment process. I know there's lots of GCs on here, so I don't want to like maybe share if this is a secret or not, but just based on my experience for GCs, a lot of GCs will pay people first based on who did the preliminary notice and who did it accurately and correctly. That is a really common practice because GCs are often concerned about lowering the risk of a lien getting placed on the project. That's part of their job. So they typically will pay people out first that have a contractor's license and did the preliminary notice and that have lien rights. And it speeds up the payment process by doing the prelim. It also increases the likelihood of payments. So there's another study I found that contractors who send out their preliminary notice are 60% more likely to get paid than those that don't. So just by doing the prelim, you're a lot more likely to get paid, even if that's the only thing you do. That can be really helpful in getting paid. It levels the playing field. So even if you're like a sub or supplier or a sub to a sub and like a few steps removed from where the money is, you still have to serve that preliminary notice to the GC owner and lender. So like you inform all the key stakeholders that you are working on the job and that you have lien rights. So it really can level the playing field in that way, even if you feel like you're really removed from like the owner. It's cost effective, so we'll secure the entire contract value. So whether your contract is, $10,000 or $10 million, like, paying, what we charge for a preliminary notice is $51. So you can pay $51 and cover the full value of that contract, no matter how long the contract goes on for and the value of that contract. So it's very cost effective in that way. If your contract's, let's just say even $10,000, it's a very, very small percentage of your overall contract. And it can really help you grow your business. So I work with, talked to a lot of subs and suppliers specifically that said that they've taken on a lot more jobs and extended a lot more credit because they have a lot more confidence that they'll be able to get paid. Because of the prelim and lien process, their likelihood of getting paid has gone up so significantly that they're extending more credit, taking on more customers, taking on a little more risk, so to speak, because they have better risk management tools. So it can really be a tool for growth as well. So yeah, hidden benefits of the prelim. And then also you have peace of mind knowing your revenue is protected. So because payment issues are so common, it's also common for a lot of people to worry about getting paid. I think doing prelims and liens really helps reduce that worry and that just having that headspace all the time of worrying about the payment. Alrighty, and some common mistakes to avoid. I'll go through this part really quickly, but not doing the prelim when it's required is the most common one. I talked to a lot of people that try to do the lien and they didn't do the prelim and it was required, and they're like, what options do we have? Can we still do the lien? And if you don't do the prelim and it's required, then the lien really would be considered invalid and it really won't give you any leverage. It could just be dismissed without any payment. So doing that prelim really is a prerequisite. It's not something you can skip if it is required. Another common mistake, honestly, the most common one is just missing the timeframes. So people either just being unaware or not having a good system of tracking timeframes for the prelim and lien. Those timeframes are really strict. So especially for the lien, if you miss the lien due date, even by a day, the lien is considered invalid. So you really want to make sure you keep track of the timeframes. And by the way, for lien timeframes specifically, we can help you with that. So if you have more questions about how to track lien timeframes, I'm happy to talk more about that later, or you can reach out to me after this. Another common mistake to avoid is just inaccurate or incomplete information on the preliminary notice. If you are missing info that's required, like GC, owner, lender, there's any kind of issues with that or any inaccuracies, it could be dismissed and could invalidate your lien rights. So it is important, like the research and verification of these notices is really important, because if there is anything that's inaccurate or incomplete, the prelim could be dismissed and could really impact your ability to get paid. Incorrect owner listed is a super common thing, kind of just getting connected to inaccurate information. But the owner is sometimes a lot harder to find than you think it is. And there could be multiple owners, there could be multiple lenders. If there's like a tenant involved or a property management company, or like it's like owned by like a family trust or something, you have to make sure you list the full owner name and the owner address exactly like how it shows on title or a deed of trust or something like that. So it is important to really do some due diligence on the owner information, because the owner is ultimately liable for the lien. Okay, cool. I will go through what is a mechanic's lien now. I think I've been talking for like 20-ish minutes, but I'm towards the end here. So bear with me. I hope this is helpful so far. I saw one more question come through about, do you research and verify if there's a lien holder or owners? Sometimes we don't have all the info. Yes, we research and verify quite a bit. I'd say that is what sets us apart in the industry, is that we have a very in-depth research and verification process. I'll talk more about that at the end if I have time. Okay, so what is a mechanic's lien? It's also referred to as a construction lien. I know mechanic's lien is a really confusing term, because it sounds like it's for an automobile or for a car. That's because the lien law was created so early, like it's before the automobile was created. So that's why it's referred to as mechanic's lien. But anyway, it's due within 90 days in California. There's several states that are also have that 90-day time frame, and it must be filed with the county recorder's office of where the job site's located. So it's not the lien can't get recorded where you're located. It has to be recorded where the job site's located. It's attached to the real property being improved. It actually encumbers the property. Another term for it is like a cloud on title, but it will halt the sale or refinance of a property until that lien is lifted. So it's a really powerful tool, especially if you're working on a job where you get wind, there's payment issues, and you get wind that like the owner is trying to sell the property quickly. Maybe they're flipping the home or doing something like that. Putting that lien on place will really halt that sale, or force the new buyer of the property to actually pay off the lien claims first before the sale can go through. So it can really be helpful in those situations as well. Gets you paid faster. So another stat here is filing mechanic's lien often results in payment up to 90 days faster compared to contractors who do not use these tools. So definitely speeds up the payment process, and it's highly effective. So contractors who file the liens receive payment over 80% more of the time, or 80% of the time, even without needing to go through foreclosure. Like I said before, the foreclosure process is very rare. Most of the time, just doing the prelim will work, and then the lien. And if you do have to do the lien, that is very effective. Like what this study is showing is over 80%. In my experience, it's closer to 95% of the time for the liens that we record for our customers. So it is very effective. So that is what is a mechanic's lien. Okay, I'm seeing lots of good questions coming through. Thank you for posting those. Once again, we'll try to get to those towards the end of the presentation, just for the sake of time. So how do liens work? This is a really quick overview. I'm more of like a visual learner. So I'm using lots of emojis here, so bear with me. It's kind of silly, but I think it kind of demonstrates how liens work in a fairly simple like use case. But let's just say this is you're a construction worker. Let's just say you're a general contractor in this situation, and you're that person with the hard hat, and you're working for the property owner, the guy with the mustache there. Let's just say your contract is like $20,000. It's you're doing like a kitchen remodel or something like that. So it's like residential work. So there's the property over there. And let's say the property's worth $1 million. Like basically every property in California is at least $1 million. And let's say you're doing some work there, right? You got your tools and your equipment and whatever you need. Let's just say for whatever reason you do all the work and the property owner has an issue with it, or they're refusing to pay. That's where you can proceed with that lien. That lien gets attached to the title of the property and kind of locks or freezes that asset, which is worth $1 million, right? And you're kind of the amount that's owed to you and the work that you performed is secured against the value of the property itself. So that's why it's such a powerful tool is like you're claiming what's owed to you against the value of the property. And that value is unlikely to change. When a project goes belly up, that's when the property is worth less than work you performed on it, which is hopefully a really rare case. But yeah, you get, so let's just say you put that lien in place, and then, the property owner's like, okay, I'll pay you, here's your money, and then you can release that lien. So it's a very simple, demonstration of how the lien process works. But I think it demonstrates like how, there's a whole nother avenue of getting paid outside of your contract that is really, really powerful and helpful. So yeah, there's my little visual, utilizing emojis. All right. And then I have like maybe 3 or 4 slides left. So I'm almost done here. But how to do a prelim in 5 minutes? This is basically a quick demo of what we do, or just explaining what we do, right? But you can order the prelim or lien from us, honestly, in 5 or 10 minutes. You just click the big red button at the top of our website. If you go to crmmlsi.com, there's this big red button that says order now. You can select what service you need. Typically, it takes 5 to 10 minutes to fill out this form. We only require a few key pieces of information because we do so much research and verification to get the owner, lender, GC info. So if you don't have all the info, it's fine. Just give us what you have. We take care of everything else. So what's included in all of our services is the research, verification, preparation, postage and handling, and service. And then, of course, like the filing as well, if you need to do a lien. So we take care of everything for you. We see a lot of customers that, especially with prelims, that we're doing this in-house. It was taking them about 2 to 3 hours to do the same type of process that we're doing, 2 to 3 hours per prelim. And we just lift all that administrative burden off of you. Now it should only take you about 5 minutes. So that's what we offer at CRM. And then once we complete the document, right, you'll get a PDF copy of the notice the day after for prelims. If it's a recorded document like a lien, we'll send you the recorded copy once it fully goes through the recording process. But yeah, that's how you can secure lien rights in just 5 minutes. So it definitely could save you a lot of time working with us. And then this is my last slide, and then I'll pass it over to Adam. But really, when we're talking about liens here and like prelims and liens, it's important to remember like plan A is when things are going right? You're doing the preliminary notice when it's required. You're doing the lien waivers, and then the lien really should be like a last resort. Just by doing an accurate prelim and utilizing electronic or automated lien waivers, that alone will result in much faster payments. And the lien waivers are a great sign that the process is working the way it should be. And that's why I was really intrigued by Beam and by what Adam is doing, because I think it can really, really help with the whole process of doing the lien waivers and speeding up the payment process, both for GCs and subs. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Adam.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to be telling Aaron when to click next for now, just so we don't have to transition screens quite yet. But great questions. Now Aaron will have a chance to answer more of them. Let's talk about lien waivers, though. We spent the first 30 minutes or so talking about prelims and liens. And prelims you should file, as at the start of each project. Liens you only need to file when you are not paid. And you do want to get paid. But oftentimes as a subcontractor or as a general contractor, you're going to have to send lien waivers after every single payment or before every single payment. So a lien waiver is a receipt of payment. And it basically just says, I did in fact get paid for a particular period of time. And there's 2 types of lien waivers, conditional and unconditional. Conditional says, hey, I haven't actually got paid yet, but if I do get paid, then I will not file a lien. Unconditional says, hey, I actually have got paid. I received the money. It's in my bank account. I'm not going to submit a lien. And then there's 2 other variants, which are very simple, actually. One is progress and the other is final. And progress just means this isn't the final payment. It's a progress payment. And final means this is, in fact, the final payment for the job. So generally what happens is, you're submitting a conditional progress, then an unconditional progress, then another conditional progress, then another unconditional progress, all the way until you submit your conditional final and your unconditional final. And we'll walk through that in a second. Now, lien waivers are generally required when there is a lender, when the owner is a larger, more established business or property owner, or a general contractor is being is required to collect lien waivers for subcontractors. The reason why lien waivers are helpful is because it reduces risk for all the parties involved. Owners don't want liens filed. General contractors don't want liens filed. Subcontractors don't want to have to go through filing liens. They'd rather just get paid on time. And so the lien waivers are just another way to ensure that people are getting paid appropriately. You must sign lien waivers. And again, it has to be an authorized representative. In just 2 states are you required to notarize. One of the very few positive things to come out of the COVID pandemic was that a couple states got rid of that notarization requirement. Okay, let's continue because we're short on time. You can send these things electronically, which is also great. So you don't, in most states, you're not going to have to send these over mail. Whereas for prelims, in many states, you do have to send them via certified mail. So it's a little bit easier to do lien waivers. So if you're a subcontractor or you're a supplier, you should be sending conditionals alongside every single invoice. You don't want to have to you don't want to have to be asked to send the conditional after the fact, because that can be slow down the payment. So it's better to just attach them to every single invoice. And generally speaking, you don't want to be filling these things out by hand every single time, because it is error prone. If you get it wrong, they're potentially going to catch it, and then that's going to potentially delay payment as well. So getting it right, using a system that's going to fill it out for you is really important. And then the other thing too is once you receive payment, sending the unconditional promptly ensures that you get paid the next time around. Because if you forget to pay an unconditional or send an unconditional waiver after you're paid, the next invoice might not get paid on time. So having more of an automated system, doing it in a timely manner, that's going to make sure that you get paid on time. And then the other thing too, most subcontractors are tracking all of their lien waivers and their lien waiver statuses, either in a spreadsheet or some sort of automated system. I would recommend just tracking it somewhere. Tracking it is better than not tracking it. But I would always recommend using an automated system if you want to save time. So we continue from here. If you are a general contractor, you're going to have to manage a whole bunch of lien waivers if it's required for a job. So you're going to be asked to collect lien waivers from all of your subcontractors and potentially any sub-tiers or suppliers that submitted preliminary notices. Connecting back to what Aaron discussed at the beginning, general contractors might not know about every single supplier on the job. So if you're a supplier or you're a subcontractor of a subcontractor, sending that preliminary notice announces to the GC, hey, I need to get paid too, whereas they might not know about you in another case. And then finally, as a subcontractor, you're going to be asked to collect those lien waivers from any subcontractors you hired or from your suppliers if they did send preliminary notices. And you might be asked every single billing period. Sometimes they'll even ask you when you haven't sent an invoice, they'll ask you to send one that just shows $0 in some cases. So yeah, it can be a lot of work. If you're doing 10 jobs at a time and you're getting and you're doing monthly billings, you're going to have to do 20 of these waivers every single month. So let's continue. It can take many, many hours. I've talked to a lot of folks in the back office who say that, around the time of billing, they're spending hours and hours just tracking down all the lien waivers they need to sign, getting them signed, filling them out properly, sending them over. Obviously, if you can save that time and do it somewhere else, it's better. So let's quickly walk through the process of the manual process if I'm a general contractor. So I'm receiving a bunch of invoices from all my vendors. And then after every single invoice has been approved, I'm going to have to send an email requesting all of my conditional waivers. And I'm going to have to check to see, hey, in any past periods, did I not get my unconditionals that I needed? And I'm going to have to send out a bunch of emails to all my vendors. I'm going to do a bunch of checks in my spreadsheet. And that's probably going to take me 5-10 hours. Then I finally get paid from the owner. That's great. Maybe it's a month later or maybe it's days later, but I get paid. And now I want to go pay all my vendors. So I need to go back make sure that all of the lien waivers are up to date again, and then I go pay my vendors. And then once you pay your vendors, you want to request all of the unconditional waivers. So you might wait 3 days or 7 days, or you might even attach to a paper check a physical unconditional and ask them to sign it and send it back. That's either going to take hours over email or hours putting together those physical documents. And then you do it all over again, every single billing period. So it ends up being hours and hours and hours on every single job, every single billing period. I don't know how many of you have, gone through this yourselves, but I'm sure, if you have, that this can get pretty hairy pretty quickly. So let's talk about how to automate it. On the next slide, I just quickly show what it looks like when you've automated it, and then I'll quickly run through it in the last couple of minutes. So adding invoices to software, our software, what it does is it automatically emails all of those vendors and notifies them and tells them, hey, in order to get paid, you need to add and sign your conditional lien waiver. So we will actually send a conditional lien waiver template over email. They'll click in, they'll hit sign, they e-sign it. And once it's e-signed, you get notified and things are ready to go. And what you can actually do is you can schedule payment directly inside of Beam, and the payment will be held until all of the past waivers have been signed. And it'll send them daily notifications reminding them to sign waivers. Now, once you schedule those payments, once the payment gets deposited via ACH or paper check, it's going to automatically send another email to vendors asking them to sign their unconditionals. So you don't have to do any sort of manual process here. You're just going into the system to check and see whether or not the waivers have been signed. And if somebody, after 3 days of daily reminders, still hasn't signed it, you might want to call them up or send them a separate email. And so it takes that 5-10 hours per billing period and makes it more like 30 minutes or 1 hour. Again, I'll show this in person or on my screen to make this a little bit more clear. So let's continue. We're going to do the live demo now. So Aaron will stop sharing and I will start sharing. I'm going to show this window. All right. Everyone can see this? Yep. So this is Anza Street. It's a fake project I created. And I first want to show you how easy it is to just sign a lien waiver in the system. So I'm going to pretend that I'm just signing a lien waiver for the owner. And I'm going to put together an invoice here. I already put in a very simple schedule of values here for a progress-based invoice. Let's say we're 50% done with procurement and contracting requirements, and we are 25% done with general requirements. The system automatically holds retainage because I set my retainage to 10%. And now what it's going to do is it's going to generate that lien waiver. So it fills out all that information that I need to put in for that conditional waiver. It says the claimant is Canary Construction. That's me. The name of the customer is Acme Development. And that's the property owner, a location, the owner's actual legal name, the through date. So that's just today because that's the date on the invoice, but I can always update this. And then all the information, exceptions, which are, can be complicated to figure out. Then finally, I can sign it. So I agree to electronic records and signatures, and I type in my name as the owner of this fake business, and it signs it directly in here. And now when I'm sending my invoice, it's going to send that lien waiver attached to the invoice. So it's going to be essentially 2 documents that the team is getting. Now that covers signing a lien waiver, and that's very similar to what your subcontractors are going to experience. But let's talk about adding in an invoice from a subcontractor. So let's say I got an invoice from a subcontractor. I'm going to upload a fake one right here just so we can look at something. And I'm just going to say this is from Dubose Demolition, a demolition sub that I work with. And I'm going to set, this is for $500, so it's a tiny one. But now I have this option right here, conditional lien waiver. And I have 3 options. One is collect e-signature from a subcontractor. That's what I'm going to do here. The second is if it's already on the document, if I already got the conditional, I can just check this. And then lastly, if I upload, I can upload it right here. And then lastly, if it's already in the document, I can select this third option. So if it's, on the second page of the document, I don't have to re-upload it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit collect e-signature from sub. That's going to automatically send them an email. And now what I can do is I can save the bill and I can schedule the payment. So if I already know that I want to pay them, I can schedule that payment. And let's say I schedule it for next week on Thursday. I hit schedule. And what's going to happen is that subcontractor got an email to sign the unconditional lien waiver for invoice number 7. And if they click here, they're going to have a really simple form to just sign the lien waiver, type in the name of the authorized representative and their title. And you can track that right here. So we're going to go to costs, we're going to go to bills, and here we see this bill and we see the lien waiver is still required. So I cannot actually pay this person. The payment's going to be on hold until they send the payment. And you'll see this warning right here. Payment will not be initiated until the conditional lien waiver is collected. So it takes that process of sending all the emails manually and really just automates all of it, automatically sends emails to the subs when they need to be notified. And then the subs don't have to build the lien waiver themselves. They just do it exactly, as you want inside of Beam. So that's just the really quick demo. Happy to share more if you have specific questions about this tool or just generally the process. We'll send an email after the meeting. You know what? I realized we wanted to continue the presentation. Because we're short on time, Aaron, let's just end it here and open it up to Q&A. I think the final note that we just had is, this can have a really big impact on your business. It can be the difference between getting paid and being able to make payroll for that month and not getting paid. And it can be the difference between getting paid on time and getting paid weeks later. And that can really impact construction businesses, which are very sensitive to cash flow problems. So, this is a very critical part of every construction business is getting this process right so that you don't end up with cash flow and payment issues down the road. We have 5 more minutes. I know we have a ton of questions here. I'll try to get to some of them. So, Karen, you mentioned what's the difference between conditional and unconditional? Conditional means I haven't yet been paid, but I am asserting that this is the amount that is due to me as of this date. And then once I am paid, I'm not going to sign a lien waiver. So it's just kind of a conditioned on getting paid. I will not lien the property. Unconditional really seals the deal. And it says, I did get paid. And because I did get paid, I will not put a lien on the property. And then Suzanne, couple automated systems you recommend. The one that I shared, our system Beam, is one of them. If you are a very, very large business, if you're a general contractor, you're doing, say, over $50 or $100 million a year, Procore also has a product now called Procore Pay. It is expensive and it does take a bit of time to get set up, but I've heard lots of great feedback from very large general contractors, usually in the $250 to billion range of construction volume. That's another really good system. Which 2 states require it to be notarized? I believe it is Mississippi and Wyoming. I would check just to double check, but I believe it's Mississippi and Wyoming that are the 2 that require it.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Someone specifically asked about New York, and I don't think New York requires it to be notarized. So
yeah, that's correct. I was just chatting with a New York contractor. I think they may have required it historically, but then loosened that requirement over the last couple of years. And then good question on if I have a condominium vacation rental property, each condo has different owners, but they use the same property management company. That is a good question. It might depend on if you're doing work for the individual condo unit or if you're doing work for the overall condominium. I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I don't know if Aaron, you know it, but we can do the research and get back to you since we have all this recorded.
Sorry, what was the question again? I was looking at
If you're working with the condominium and there are multiple owners and your project potentially spans multiple owners, who do you list as the owner? Who do you send the prelims or the liens to?
Yeah. So I can answer that question really quickly. It gets a little bit, it can be a little bit convoluted in that case. So I think it would be helpful if you're new to this to work with a company like ours to do the research. But if you're doing work in specific units that are owned by individual owners, you do have to list each owner individually and serve individual prelims and individual liens. If you're doing work on like, let's say it's like the common area or like the part of the HOA, like a roof or like a basketball court or pool or something like that, then that would just be one owner. And it's usually owned by like the HOA typically for those condo complexes. So it just depends what type of work you're doing. If it's like a shared space and it's owned by the HOA or by, property management, then you can list them as the owner. But if it's work in individual units, then each one needs to be its own prelim and lien.
Awesome. And Elena also asked about a lien release letter. I think, Aaron, you guys do have templates that you can send over. And then also, if you have to do this pretty often, that's where an automated system like Beam might help. So if you are sending these on a regular cadence, you might want to consider an automated system. I think, Jimmy, you asked the question from Rick, which was what recourse do we have for getting paid when a general contractor hasn't paid you? I think we already talked about this, and really, I think if they're asking you not to submit a prelim, you probably shouldn't be working with them in the first place unless they are willing to prepay. But in most states, if you did not file that prelim, you're just not going to be able to lien the property. You can still threaten to, and you can still technically send the lien, but you're probably not going to end up winning if it goes to court, is my understanding. So you can still cause a headache and make the contractor, maybe just want to end up paying you instead versus having to pay a bunch of lawyers. But yeah, my recommendation is maybe don't consider starting work with a general contractor who doesn't do that. So Emmanuel, once you want to send the final, you just check a box that says this is the final payment, and it'll automatically update the format and automatically, fill out the final instead of the progress waiver. That's a good question.